Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining. Really happy that so many of you are able to join us today for a special edition, I'll call it, of our Ask Said Anything event series focused on University of Alberta for Tomorrow initiative, otherwise known as UAT. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Todd Gilchrist. I'm the Vice President of University Services and Finance here at the U of A. And so I'm also part of today's panel. My primary role today will be as the moderator for our session. I would like to first begin with our treaty acknowledgement. The University of Alberta acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. I would like to introduce our panel today. We'll start with Bill Flanagan. Of course, Bill is our President and Vice-Chancellor at the U of A. I'd like to welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Bill. Would like to welcome Greta Cummings. Greta is our Interim College Dean for the College of Health Sciences.
Good morning.
Morning, Greta. We have Melissa Padfield with us this morning. Melissa is our Vice Provost and University Registrar in the Office of the Registrar. And I believe I owe Melissa a special thank you because I think she's actually on vacation today. So thank you, Melissa, for joining.
Hi, everyone.
And with that introduction of our panel, I'll turn things over to President Flanagan to share some opening comments. Bill, over to you.
Well, thank you, Todd, and good morning, everyone. First, I apologize for this somewhat wonky internet connection of mine. I'm having to do this on my cell phone because I'm in Calgary, and the internet connection here at the hotel is not working. But I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. And I first just wanted to open my comments with just an acknowledgement of just what a challenging time I know that this is for all of you and really for all of us at the university. We've been undergoing a period of, as we all know, a period really of dramatic restructuring at the university now for well over a year, really since I joined the university just almost a year and a half ago. And I know that for all of you, and really for all of us, this has been a period of a very challenging period as we undergo these changes. And I know in particular the job reductions and the departure of many of our colleagues has been particularly challenging for all members of the university community. And so I think it's just really important that I acknowledge that right at the outset of our discussion today. And recognizes, I mean, we all know the reality that the university is facing, a 33% reduction in our Campus Alberta grant, announced just very shortly before my appointment as president was announced. So I've really only been here at a time of budget reductions at the university. And this has had a huge impact on all of us. And as we know, the next year, there is a final year of the cuts that the government announced about 2 years ago. And we're projecting an additional $54 million cut to our Campus Alberta grant in the next year. And so we're not through this period yet. There's still a very difficult period ahead for the university as we continue to adjust, continue to address these budget cuts, and of course, continue to engage in the SET restructuring that I know all of you have been very engaged with. I did want to acknowledge that we've hired 300 new people into new roles as a result of the SET restructuring, and 97% of those hires are internal hires. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, just how important it is and the importance that we attach to retaining the tremendous talent that we have here at the university. So we're really pleased that 97% of these new positions have been filled by existing employees at the university. And I've had an opportunity to meet with a number of our employees. In particular, in the spring, I had an opportunity to meet with the Student Services Center. As you know, we've established a new Student Services Center where we're centralizing a lot of the provision of our student services. And I have to say, I was really impressed with the staff members that I met. I mean, of course, I was not surprised by their dedication and their talent, and really their dedication to the University of Alberta. And in challenging circumstance, as we all know with the COVID pandemic, and as you know, the university announced a mandatory vaccination policy in August of this year. Our Student Services Center had to deal with many, many inquiries from students, some very unhappy students about our new policy. And again, I think I was just really impressed with their commitment to our students and their commitment to the university. And a real sense of camaraderie that I sensed in the staff members that I met with at the Student Services Center, a real sense of working together. And I think in some measure, this might reflect some of the benefits that might be associated with the centralization of these services. And I was able to talk to some staff members who previously worked only within one faculty, and now as a result of the consolidation of our student services are working with a variety of students from across the university. And although challenging and a very steep learning curve, a number of the staff members mentioned to me just how interesting it was for them to be engaged much more broadly in the university community than they had been in the past. And I also had an opportunity to tour the Enterprise Square downtown and the new staff services center that is being established there. And I have to say it's a beautiful facility, one that's very much designed to enhance collaboration among our colleagues at the university. So we will continue to move forward as we proceed through SET. And one thing I just wanted to acknowledge is, as you all know, we're not yet completed the job reductions, and again, reflecting the $54 million cut that we must plan for in the upcoming fiscal year. But we do anticipate that the job reductions will be completed by March of next year. And I'd like today just to talk to you a little bit about some of my thoughts for the university going forward as we move through SET, as we move to complete the job reductions and also place the university on a stable financial footing going forward. And as you all know, we're in a period of dramatic change at the university. I'm just going to shift my phone around here so I can see these slides better. I apologize for the disruption there. But we are on track, as we had hoped to be, to reduce our administrative costs. And by 2022, our funding per student will be at about $12,000 per student, which places us at about the average of the U15. A significant reduction, of course, from the historic levels of funding at the university, but still a level of funding that can enable us to continue to compete with among some of Canada's top universities. Next slide. And so again, our vision here is to establish a one university vision for the university going forward. A leadership that is united by a common vision and brand, and transforming our organizational and academic structures. And in particular, as you all know, we've established our colleges with a vision to establish a new level of interdisciplinary teaching and research, and equip our staff better than ever to serve the university community. If we could move to the next slide. And so I just wanted to talk briefly about some of the priorities for the upcoming year. And one of the things that you will have heard me speak about in the past is deconsolidation. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about enrollment growth, our colleges, our ambitions for U of A Online, and some of our ambitions about research. If we could move to the next slide. As you will all know, we worked very hard in the Alberta 2030 review to advocate for deconsolidation of the university's accounts from the public accounts. And it was a very important outcome for the university that the Minister of Advanced Ed announced as part of the Alberta 2030 review that the province would proceed with deconsolidation of the University of Alberta from the provincial accounts. Now, what this will mean is it will give us much greater control over our financial future as a university. And in particular, just as one example of deconsolidation, it will enable us to use our carry forward funds to advance the university and invest those funds in a strategic way. Currently, because we're consolidated with the provincial accounts, we're not able to spend our carry forward funds because the province needs to reduce its expenditures. Because we're consolidated with the provincial accounts, the province likewise wants us to reduce our expenditures. So the province will not permit us to spend our carry forward funds. And these are carry forward funds that we ourselves, from our own revenue that we have generated as a university. So deconsolidation will permit the university much greater financial freedom. It will take some time to achieve deconsolidation. It will require amendments to the Post-Secondary Learning Act, and the government will have to reduce the number of government appointees on our board, and the board chair can no longer be appointed directly by the minister. It's because of this that we're deemed to be controlled by the province and thus wrapped up in provincial accounts. When those changes to the board composition are made, then we can successfully deconsolidate from the public accounts. But this will take some time. It's not looking like this will be in place for the next fiscal year, but we're hopeful that it will be in place in the following year. Next slide. Enrollment growth, of course, is the thing that I think is of greatest potential gain for the university and for the province of Alberta. And this is the remarkable number of the remarkable demographics in Alberta. And that is the number of young people who will be graduating from Alberta high schools in the next 5 years, projected to increase by as much as 25% over the next 5 years. So in all of my conversations with government, my number one topic, after deconsolidation, is enrollment growth and the importance of the province investing in providing opportunity for young Albertans. To recognize that we need to dramatically grow our post-secondary institutions in Alberta to meet this demographic wave coming our way. And at the University of Alberta, our applications are up 25% in the last 5 years alone, 10% in the last year alone. So as you know, we have very ambitious goals to grow our enrollment from 40,000 to well over 50,000 students in the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm actively engaged in conversations with the government of Alberta about enrollment growth and about the importance of the government investing in supporting that enrollment growth. We know we cannot sustain enrollment growth on tuition revenue alone. We can only do this in partnership with the province. And so I think my message is landing with the province. The province recognizes that it must invest in the sector in order to provide opportunities for young Albertans. And I will continue to make this my number one goal moving forward with the government. The next slide. And so we have a proposal to the government right now to grow our enrollment by 3,500 students in the next 2 years. This would represent a 15% growth in our domestic enrollment. Now, I think the government is certainly interested in seeing us grow, but we have a government, as you know, that is very focused on cost containment, that has been very clear with me on repeated occasions that there will be no budging on the cost reductions that are being imposed on the university. So again, I will just continue to press that the government cannot continue to engage in just an exercise of cost containment. It must invest in the university and in the sector to support growth, recognizing the demographics of Alberta and a very young population. The next slide. So just briefly about our colleges, as you know, they have been established. We're actively working with our college deans to settle on what administrative service will rest with the colleges. The ultimate goal, as you know, is that the colleges will provide a level of administrative support to the faculties at a reduced cost. That is, the colleges will be able to maintain, the goal is that they will be able to help maintain levels of service at a reduced cost. And so I'm very grateful to the college deans for the work that they're doing. But in the longer term, I think the colleges also hold great potential to advance their interdisciplinary teaching and research at the university. Next slide. And then U of A Online. Again, coming out of COVID, I think we've all had a new appreciation of what we can do as a university in technology-enhanced learning, and also expand the scope of what we can do and the people that we can reach by thinking thoughtfully about what online programs we as a university want to invest in. And so we're developing a strategic plan for U of A Online that will have ambitious goals to grow our numbers of online learners over the next 2 to 3 years. And we will be rolling out this plan in the next few months. And again, the idea is not only to extend our reach of what we can do as a university, but also drive new revenue growth to support the university. Next slide. And just quickly on some of our research strengths, we've got an ambitious proposal into the federal government to support the establishment of a biomanufacturing sector right here in Edmonton. that would be a pipe that would benefit from the pipeline of some of the terrific research coming out of the University of Alberta. We're also, of course, one of the world's leading institutions on energy and future energy systems, likewise in the areas of artificial intelligence, agriculture, and I think some of the greatest contributions that we can make as a university are in the social sciences and humanities, in particular, thinking about that society that we all want to build and to live in, a society that is inclusive, equitable, and a society in which Indigenous reconciliation is at the core. On the next slide. So our 5-year vision is a one university. We aim to expand our enrollment to well over 50,000 students. If we're successful in getting the government to collaborate with us and support that enrollment at the reduced rate of $12,000 a student, which is where we will be after all the cuts are in place, this would mean that this would generate an additional $180 million in revenue to support the university. We could aim to increase our faculty complement by as much as 25%. And of course, as we continue to invest in U of A online, we can be a global leader in technology enhanced learning, not only what we're doing online, but also what we're doing in the classroom to invest in enhancing the student experience. And our next slide, aiming to have a research impact that has never been greater. Particularly if we're able to expand our faculty numbers, we can aim to secure our position among the top 100 global universities. Continue to engage in community engagement, the relevance of our university having never been greater. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks, Todd, and I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, President Flanagan, for your opening comments, for painting a bit of that vision for us as we move in today, and really helping set the stage as we move into our question portion of our session. I'd like to invite Brett Zabajak. I'm sorry, Brett, I practiced and I still got it wrong. Brett is our Manager of Residence, Occupancy and Recruitment, and a member of our UAT staff advisory team. Has been heavily involved since the beginning of SESC. So Brett, I'd like to ask you to please ask our first question and get us going today. And we're going to let President Flanagan respond to your question.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Todd. I really appreciate being able to be here. And I mean, first off, thank you to the panel, Melissa, Greta, Bill, and Todd for the leadership you're showing through UAT and SET, as well as all the other people I see on this call that are big leaders position-wise versus leading every day in their work to move us forward. Just thank you. My question is around people and morale. As someone that's been involved with SET in varying capacities, I'll admit that at times it gets really tiring. The perseverance, the endurance through navigating the change, it wears on you. It gets tiring at times, frustrating, confusing, and even lonely. So I'm just wondering what advice that you have for all the people, the employees, the leaders at this institution who are feeling the deep fatigue of change right now, knowing that like SET isn't over.
Well, thank you, Brett. Everyone can hear me. Once again, I apologize for the terrible internet connection I've got here. I realize this has not been a great Zoom performance on my end. But thank you, Brett, for the question. And I recognize what a challenging time this is for the university, really exhausting for all of us. And we're not through it yet, as you've mentioned. There's still a significant road ahead as we continue to implement the centralization of services. And we have to be honest, there will still be ongoing job reductions, hoping to wrap those up by March of next year. And I think it's particularly challenging to see colleagues depart. It's really, I think it can only be described as heartbreaking, recognizing that these are colleagues that are been very devoted to the service of the University of Alberta. And this departure is not only, of course, heartbreaking for those who are individually affected, it's really tough for the colleagues who remain behind, not only to see their colleagues depart, but also to recognize that with this departure, we have to restructure the work that we do. We have to do as best we can to sustain levels of service with significantly fewer people. And again, this is what we're trying to do with SET by restructuring, by centralizing, trying to maintain those levels of service with significantly fewer people. But I recognize that this is not easy. And in fact, I think the path ahead is perhaps even going to be more difficult than the path that we've been on for the last year. And the path ahead, as you know, we're setting up this shared services center. There's a lot of bumps in the road as we do this. We're identifying gaps in the delivery of service. We're hearing about this. We're trying to address this as best we can. And I mean, I know that all of you are very much engaged in that effort. And this will continue to be bumpy as we develop the shared services, as we learn to work together within these shared services, as we try to achieve some of the economies of scale that we're hoping to achieve with the shared services. And also the people who are using the services will need to learn new ways to access services. The familiar ways of accessing these services may no longer be present. And so this is a huge disruption for the whole university community. And I can also say that universities that have undergone this type of reorganization have typically done it over a much longer period of time, and typically would have done it starting with individual services such as IT, HR, finance, and with less disruption to the university. And of course, we would have preferred to have done that, had that option been available to us. But as we all know, the scale of the cuts, the size of it, and the speed with which these cuts have been implemented have required us to undertake this restructuring all at once throughout the entire university. And as I've mentioned, we're learning from a lot of other universities that have undergone similar levels of restructuring, but no university that we have worked with has ever undertaken a restructuring initiative as comprehensive and as quickly as the one that we're doing. So this is all to say is that I recognize what a tough time this is. And I think it's really important that we all recognize that we're all working through a difficult time. But I think it's also, and of course, my role as president is not only to recognize that difficulty that we're all going through, but also try as best I can to articulate a vision for the university going forward. A vision that I think is a bright one where the fundamentals of the university remain extremely strong, our research strength, our teaching strength, the commitment and dedication of our staff. And again, the fundamentals of Alberta, particularly a young demographic, this is a remarkable opportunity for us as a university. There's a capacity for us to grow, drive revenue growth for the university, and reinvest in our teaching and research strength and be that university that we all want to be. So I, as you know, am committed to doing all that I can to seize these opportunities for the university going forward. Deconsolidation is one that I mentioned. Enrollment growth is a sensational opportunity, but we need to convince the government of Alberta that it must partner with us and invest in providing those opportunities for young Albertans. And I can commit to you and all of you that I will continue to do all that I can to make that case going forward. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brett, for getting our questions started, and Bill for your thoughts on that very important question that Brett raises. So now it's everybody's turn. Please do feel free to use your virtual hands. I see a couple of there. Raise your hands. We're going to work to answer as many of your questions as possible during the rest of our time together. If you're not able to ask a question live, or oftentimes people don't feel comfortable doing so, particularly in such a large group, we have added a question form to the chat. If it's not in the chat box, it will be just momentarily. And you can type your questions into that, and they will be sent to me as the moderator. And like I say, we'll work to get as many answered as we possibly can. So with that, I see we've got a couple hands up. We'll start with Cynthia first. And Cynthia, I have to acknowledge the chicken picture behind you. Is that a chicken? I love that.
Yes, it is. I painted that.
Did you?
Yes.
That's fantastic. I've been watching it since you put your hand up. Okay, Cynthia, over to you, please.
So not surprisingly, I work in the Faculty of Agricultural Life and Environmental Sciences. First of all, kudos on the deconsolidation milestone. That is, I think, a very significant accomplishment. So thank you very much for carrying that ball as far as we have downfield. That's really great. The concern that I have is that we've got more positions that we need to cut, and I'm making assumptions that those will likely be support positions, and yet we're adding 500 academic positions, and we can feel already in this transition just how much challenge and burden and stress there is already on our support teams with our existing academic cohorts. And I am looking to you for some suggestions on how we reconcile that tension now and especially into the future as we have more academics and fewer non-academics.
If I could just jump in there, Cynthia, when I mentioned the potential growth opportunities, particularly the, this is my dream, is that we can realize that it would be as much as $180 million in new revenue for the university. If we were to grow by 10,000 students and an additional 500 faculty, there's no question we'd have to invest significantly in support services to support the additional faculty and the additional students. And so a big chunk of that $180 million would be exactly directed to that. That is to the whole range of support services that we would need. I mean, as we all know, 10,000 students, that's a lot of students. And 500 faculty, that's a lot of faculty. And this is all faculty that we would have, of course, great ambitions for their teaching and research excellence. And we all know that that requires staffing support and resources for these professors to succeed, and also significant resources for an additional 10,000 students to support those students, to ensure that they have an outstanding student experience. Because that, as we all know, is at the core of what we do at the university. If we're not providing an outstanding student experience to our students, then we're failing as a university. And our support staff, as we all know, are absolutely key to achieving that objective. So I just want to be really clear that when I talk about the enrollment growth potential and the potential to increase our faculty complement, we recognized we cannot do that unless we invest significantly in staffing resources. Now, we'll do that under the new model and the restructured university and so forth. But there will be substantial investments. There has to be, in order for us to support the faculty so that they can do all the great things that we want them to do, and also support our students so that they will continue to have an outstanding student experience at the university. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks, Cynthia. If I could, I'll maybe just take this opportunity to just add a little bit to what Bill said. Bill painted a very inspiring future vision for us. We do have, as was also mentioned earlier, we are still currently in contraction. So we still have the $54 million cut that will take effect April 1st. And so we do continue down that path. Which is relevant, I think, to your question, because you did also allude to currently. And so I would just add that a couple of things just this morning, in fact, about, 45 minutes ago or so, I did send a communication out to the general managers within the organization. We have created a new job card called job card that has 4 positions on for general administration. So that is part of the overall operating model, has always been contemplated, and now is the time to implement that. So while we work to stand up the services in the new central operating model, we do also, of course, need to ensure that the work that remains in the decentralized part of the organization has the appropriate structure to be able to support it. Certainly not without its bumps. Again, as we've gone through this, we are working to respond to service gaps that we are aware of currently, which we're recognizing right now anyways, predominantly in the area of human resources. And so Rhea Ames and Tanya Wick, our AVPs in shared services and human resources, are working to respond to those gaps as we speak. And we hope to see some changes happening just in the next number of days. Thank you, Cynthia. Jillian, good to see you this morning. Over to you.
Yeah, likewise, Todd. Long time no see.
Yes.
So, Bill, I'm just keeping in mind that you just made that comment about how support staff are key to implementing this new vision. we all saw the release of the new brand video that was released last week or the week before, whenever it was at this point. So keeping those support staff, they're key to implementing this vision in mind. I'm wondering how you in particular lead these support staff under that new vision. So leading support staff with purpose, what does that look like to you?
Thank you, Jillian. Well, our new brand, as you mentioned, is leading with purpose. And we can't advance our teaching and research mission without our support staff. And we recognize that, as I said earlier, absolutely key to having an outstanding student experience, but also key to supporting the teaching and research endeavors of our faculty. And so leading with purpose, our staff have to be at the center of that mission, of that vision for the university, recognizing their importance both in sustaining an excellent student experience and also building the teaching and research excellence for which the University of Alberta is renowned. And so as I mentioned earlier, my ambitions are large for the university to expand our enrollment. I mean, this I think would be probably the largest and fastest expansion enrollment in the history of the university. And we can do it just with the demographic growth in Alberta alone. And I just want to be really clear to you and to others that if we are successful in getting the government of Alberta to partner with us to support this growth, and I don't know how the government of Alberta could not, because how could a government not invest in opportunities for young Albertans? One thing I don't know if you read Alex Usher, but he posted a blog the other day that indicated that up to 6,000 young Albertans leave Alberta every year to pursue post-secondary opportunities elsewhere in Canada. We're losing far too many young Albertans, and the numbers of young Albertans seeking to study at the University of Alberta will continue to grow dramatically. So I have great ambitions for growth, and I recognize that those ambitions for growth cannot succeed, our students won't succeed, and our faculty won't succeed if we don't invest in the support services to enable our students and faculty to thrive. For me, that's what's leading with purpose, and our staff are right at the center of that.
Excellent, thanks, Bill, and thanks, thank you, Jillian. Let's move on to Tara. I always have to also comment on Tara's lovely art behind her. I know she's the artist of at least one of those. So good to see you this morning, Tara.
Actually, that art is my mother's.
Oh, is it? I thought one was yours, but
I do woodworking, so if there's a bowl behind me, that would be mine, but
okay.
No, the art's my mom's. It's nice to see that we are highlighting that we've got academic and scholarly leadership in Indigenous and equity, diversity, and inclusion in the research. It is nice to see that on the slide. But what I would like to do is I'd like to get an update on what the EDI impacts of the restructuring have been so far. So beyond members of the SET team taking GBA plus training, what other actions have you implemented? Are you collecting data to capture if members of equity deserving groups are being successful in remaining employed at the U of A? In your process redesign activities, are you using GBA plus training, using your GBA plus training to understand how the challenges impact the different kinds of employees we have at the U of A? What kinds of EDI supportive actions have you adopted in the recruitment process in filling the new positions? Do you have any plans for further training? Is there anything you're doing that I haven't identified? So just can you give us an update?
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Tara. I'm going to take a stab at that. I do want to acknowledge before I start that you've asked a number of really good questions there, and I could probably talk for the remainder of our hour just on it. And not to suggest that these aren't very important questions, I do want to leave enough time for people to respond. So, I'm going to ask my team that's on here to capture those questions. I believe you might have actually sent these in advance as well. So, so I'd like to make sure that we get a fulsome written response back. And so we'll do that when this information comes out, like the transcript or the recording and the Q&A from this session, Tara, if that's okay. But,
yeah.
But I do want to touch on a few things, and I want to say that IIEDI is, has been, is, and will continue to be very critical to the university's, you know, past, present, and future. And we recognize that we have lots of work to do in that regard. Transitions as we are going through right now, which impact our people, are to varying degrees a little bit constrained, if you will, within some of the agreements and so forth that we have to follow as we make these changes. But we are working to try to protect equity seeking portions of our population to the extent that we can, and we have actually you know, done some of that through not applying reduction targets to certain areas, for example. We don't have a great way, to be honest with you, to track what our diversity statistics are, or our IIEDI statistics are on a day-to-day basis. Our main mechanism for that is through our surveys, which we do on a regular basis, and we'll be able to track sort of what the changes are in those statistics from survey to survey. And of course, we will be transparent with that information. We do it about every 3 years, and the last one was done in 2019. So, you know, we'll get a good picture of what the difference would be. Insofar as what we are currently doing and where we are going, again, the list is quite long, and I probably wouldn't do it justice in just a response here today. So again, with your permission, I'd like to make sure that we do get a fulsome response to all those questions, and we'll send it out in the written format. Would that be okay, Tara?
Absolutely, that would be okay. Yeah, I understand that I want a fulsome answer. So if I can get that in a written form, that would be great.
Yeah, fantastic. So we'll do that, and Tara, I'll ask you when that comes out, you know, if there are follow-on questions or detail that you think are important, just let us know, and we're happy to add to it as well. Thank you so much. Good morning, Barbara.
Oh, good morning. So I would like to dig into a little bit more about having a conversation around the revenue growth and the revenue generation that that Bill had talked about. Now, we know that there's the plan for the 15% growth for students. We know that there is the intent to have more of a financial freedom as we break away from some of our bonds. You know, you saw the picture with the chains, you know, from the provincial government, which is great. But as an academic department manager, and I've always worked in the departments at the University of Alberta for the past 20 years, I know what it takes in order to look at what that revenue generation and what that revenue growth is going to be. And that is going to be really on what your NASA staff can do, what your APO constituencies can do, what your professors can do, and it all happens, all the revenue is generated from within the departments. So if you could provide a little bit more information as to what does that actually look like, because we actually don't have a lot of staff left and or APOs in the departments to be able to accommodate that growth. So if you have some type of idea on what that revenue generation is going to look like, that would really that's something that I would like to hear more about. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Barbara. Bill, I'm going to maybe ask you to start on that. I know there's a component in there around, I think, the restructuring as well, which I'm happy to try to respond to. But Bill, did you have some thoughts on the revenue side first?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. As I indicated earlier, as you know, I've got huge ambitions for growth for the university, and at every opportunity I speak to the government of Alberta about this, and also more broadly to everyone I talk to in Alberta, because I want parents calling up the government of Alberta saying, I want opportunities for my children, and the government of Alberta needs to address that. And if we are able to grow, as I hope that we will, and as you noted, we've got an ambitious proposal already to the government to grow our domestic enrollment by 15%. As indicated earlier, it's absolutely essential that we invest in the staffing resources to sustain that growth and to make that growth possible. We cannot grow by 3,500 students or by 10,000 students unless we are very thoughtful about the support services to ensure that those students will have a great student experience. And likewise, there's not any point in bringing on new faculty and have ambitions for their teaching and research without giving them the support that they need to thrive as teachers, as researchers. And just to the earlier question, I also, again, with my ambitions for growth, if we could grow our faculty complement by 525% and a significant growth in our staffing resources to support the additional faculty and students, there's a huge opportunity for the university to advance its commitments around Indigenous initiatives and EDI, and to really become that university that is truly reflective of the broader population in Alberta. And again, an expansion of that nature, 10,000 students, 25% increase in our faculty complement. This is an amazing opportunity for the University of Alberta to be a national leader in advancing Indigenous initiatives, its commitment to indigeneity, and its commitment to EDI. And so this is why I think it's really important that we have the processes in place to make sure that recruitment going forward will pay very close attention to our EDI and Indigenous commitments. So I do remain optimistic that the government of Alberta will have to do something to address enrollment growth and to invest in enrollment growth, simply because the demographic numbers in Alberta are so remarkable. And as I've indicated, I am determined to make everything I can of this opportunity for the University of Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Barbara, maybe I would just add a couple of thoughts if I can. As Bill has talked about the vision for the future, you know, I've heard from a lot of people in the university that that's inspiring, and people are really happy to sort of see that growth agenda coming through, because we've had to spend such a period of time in contraction. As the CFO, I guess, you know, I'll speak from the place that we are, while we're looking to that inspiring future, we are still dealing with at least one more year worth of cuts. I mean, that's what we're planning for right now at $54 million. And that is the part that's really, really difficult for us all to deal with and accomplish. But we'll say that as we shift towards that growth, you know, people like yourself and your colleagues that are in those roles that have the experience, I mean, we're going to have some conversations about what do we need on the support side and, excuse me, on the support side as we do shift gears into that growth mode. So, you know, that's a commitment that we'll put out there. Thank you, Barbara and Bill. Mayanne, good morning.
Good morning. I guess my question kind of touches a bit with Barbara. I'm part of the facilities and operations group, and I really want to thank you for this forum to help us to better understand the growth of the future and the programs that are being put into place. But I hear a lot, you know, the support, administrative support. I'm just wondering the impact for the future with the operational side and what the thoughts there were. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll give you some thoughts, and I'll preface it by saying that there is probably an opportunity for further discussion when we talk about our facilities and operations side. I just want to clarify that's what your question is in relation to. I can tell you that at present, F&O, so Andrew Sharman's team, is at the beginning of their organization design work, their review of F&O, as other portfolios have gone through. My portfolio in University Services and Finance was one of the first seen. External Relations do their review. Research and Administration is going through their review, and Andrew is still fairly early on in that process. So at this point, would be premature to comment on what changes may come from that. I'm led to understand from Andrew and his team that they're having some really good conversations around it, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I would suggest that within, say, the next month, 6 weeks or so, we should have some more information to share on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Patrick, how are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. So I'd like to share a comment, a couple of comments actually. And it'd be fantastic to get a response to them, but they're not going to be easy to hear. The idea that we can ask anything in these forums is not true. Or at least it doesn't feel that way. I think it's also important to acknowledge that there's much we'd like to say that we don't say. So I'm going to say those things. I feel extremely sad about what is happening right now. Many of my colleagues do as well. I feel quite angry about what's happening right now because we, the staff, are taking on nearly all of the brunt of the cuts. Earlier, Bill, you talked about, in your presentation, you talked about creating a society which is inclusive, just, equitable, and creative. That seems rather incongruent with that vision, I have to say. It's hard for us, the hallway conversations that we have sound like this. We look at the cuts that faculty are not taking. We look at the disclosure list and do back of the napkin calculations and look at the amount of money that would be saved if faculty were to share in austerity cuts. Speaking to faculty colleagues who are in leadership positions who've shared with me that these things were proposed but then not acted upon, it's very hard for me to understand why it is that this is falling on us and it isn't being shared equitably. And I realize that your jobs may not be easy, and there's a lot happening behind the scenes that I don't know about. It's very distressing though. And I'd like you to keep in mind that I'm support staff, but that doesn't really cover well what my role is here. I'm also a sessional. I was until recently a graduate student. I'm an alumnus, a donor, and a parent of children who've told me they don't want to come to this institution now, which made me sad. I love this university. I'm very proud of all the work I've done here. But I'd like to confront the fact that it's the thing we're not talking about. Why are staff taking all the cuts?
Thank you, Patrick. I mean, I can provide a technical answer. Sorry, that's the wrong way to put it because I don't want it to sound like there's not a lot of empathy there for it. And then I'll ask others to chime in. So as the university implements its new operating model, which looks to centralize administrative-like services, those are the people that you reference predominantly are the people that are in those positions from those roles. And in that consolidation of those activities, yes, those people are support staff or support professionals are disproportionately impacted in that regard. And I don't believe that I or anybody else has ever disputed that fact. And we are trying to move forward again with empathy as we move to implement the new model. Again, would we have necessarily chosen to do it in the time frame that we are if it weren't for the significance and the speed of the cuts to our government grant? I don't know. That would be a speculation on my part, but would emphasize that we have been put on a path that is largely driven by, again, the depth and speed of those cuts. Bill or other members of the panel, I think Patrick asks a fantastic question. Patrick, I should have started by thanking you for saying those uncomfortable things or making those uncomfortable comments.
Thank you for hearing them, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, they're very important, and thank you for challenging me. I'll say challenging us all as a group on the call here today and as a community. It's named Ask Said Anything because we do truly want to have that two-way conversation. I know that there has been a comment made that this hasn't been a two-way conversation. It is a difficult environment with what we're trying to do, largely virtually, right? There's lots of different challenges that we have, but we do want to have that open, transparent conversation. And so I want to thank you for saying those difficult things. And for the record, I I didn't mind hearing them at all. I'm glad that you brought them up. So thank you. Bill or others, is there any further response that anybody would like to offer to Patrick from the panel?
Yeah, I can share a few thoughts. First, thank you, Patrick. As Todd said, those are not easy things to say. They're not easy things to hear. And it is important that it be said. And I just want to thank you. It's courageous of you to step forward and make these points. And as Todd mentioned, there's just no question the bulk of the cuts are falling on staff. And we know that. It's clear in the numbers. And it's an extremely difficult circumstance for all of our staff, as I mentioned at the outset, just recognizing the enormous challenge that it is for all of you as we continue to grapple with these changes. I think as Todd had mentioned, in addressing the enormous cuts to our budget, and as you all know, the speed and scale of this is unprecedented in the history of the university. We've looked primarily at our administrative services as where we can achieve the greatest savings by centralizing and the whole process of SET. And just by having focused on administrative services, this necessarily means that the focus is primarily on our support staff. And we're trying as best we can to preserve as best we can our core mission, which is teaching and research. And without faculty, we cannot teach students, and without faculty, we cannot engage in research. And so the faculty are obviously fundamental to our core mission and teaching our students and engaging in research. But at the same time, as I said at the outset, none of that succeeds without support staff, or we can't ensure an outstanding student experience without support staff, and the faculty will not thrive in teaching and research without support staff. So I know that's probably not a very satisfactory answer to a very difficult question, but a very fair question. And again, I just want to thank you, Patrick, for stepping forward.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Patrick. And to Patrick and to everybody else on the call and watching in the YouTube or that might watch the recording afterwards, please don't feel that you have to sit in silence with your thoughts or comments or questions outside of forums like these. There are ways to engage, and in the absence of maybe feeling comfortable in any of those other ways, if you're comfortable in reaching out to me via email, I'm happy to respond and or try to set up time for a discussion. So, thank you, Patrick. Denise, welcome. Good to see you. I will just note, sorry, Denise, just before you ask your question, I just want to be cognizant of time here. We've got about, 5 minutes left, and then I'll have to wrap up. So, Denise, over to you.
Somewhat had more of a comment type question as well. And thank you, Patrick, but you somewhat, I just hear, because that's kind of what I'm trying to say. And you said it a lot better than I could have. One of the things that I just wanted to mention is that I love the idea of the growth. I love the idea of kind of moving forward and getting more students and getting more staff. I'm having a hard time with in between, as I'm sure many other people are. I'm still trying to do the work as we go, right? Just like everybody else. And losing support staff and their knowledge is creating gaps in the details. We're finding them later and we're fixing them in an aftermath. And those are kind of the things that stress me out. Certain things about student growth that stress me out. I know we can handle it and I know we can develop and grow to it and I look forward to it. But it's coming to tax time and I'm doing T2202s and I'm getting a little stressy. It's just my own personal path. So it's more of a comment about how, or can you in a future date give us a vision of how do we get through to get to a state? Because if I hear about something that's lost in job losses, a knowledge piece and a step that wasn't done, and I found it and now I got to fix it, that adds to my plate. That's something I never had to deal with before. So now I'm doing more and stressing out about more. And I just don't see, okay, we're going to hire someone in 3 years. How do I get through? And again, sorry, thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Denise, for your comment and question. I'm going to put Melissa just on deck here. I would like to hear from Melissa, just because you use some examples there specifically that I think Melissa is probably most knowledgeable in. I do just want to make a comment though in what I'll consider a bit more of the broad sense, in that the challenge or the stress that the organization is under from just what you mentioned is heard. I want to say understood, but at the same time, I also want to acknowledge that I don't walk in your shoes exactly, Denise, so I can't truly understand, but I'm understanding the pressure. And we are working in a couple of ways, both in a reactive way to try to fill gaps as we go through this transition. I mentioned some of the work that we're doing there earlier, as well as we work to map the processes and understand the processes, so that as we move into this new world, new service model, that we are understanding that end to end, that folks like yourself have the process and the history on. But Melissa, over to you maybe for a few comments.
Yeah, and I'm cognizant of time too, but I think, this is where the context that we found ourselves in creates a lot of stressors, right? Because we don't have the time that we would have wanted to take in order to be able to thoroughly understand all the pieces of every process before we had to make change. What I will say is that where I draw confidence from is that as a university, we didn't take on this challenge by simply doing an across the board cut and letting the chips fall where they may. We actually took some thoughtful attention into different tracks of work that we had to think about in a more nuanced and perhaps a bit of an innovative way. That hasn't made the bumps go away, because we're still flying the plane, building the plane, designing the plane all at the same time, while we're trying to fly through a ton of turbulence. And that makes right now really, really challenging. In terms of the gaps that you identify, I think the only way we get through this together, and Denise, you had heard me say this in other places, so I'm not just saying it to you because I know we chat regularly, but is creating those forums for the staff that know, the folks on the ground that are experiencing the realities, to flag the key areas that we aren't seeing that have the most critical impact when they come up. Right now, in a 3-year process, we would have caught that through different kind of process design, but we didn't have that luxury. And so being able to really count on that two-way communication, I think, is what we have to critically rely on, and what we're trying to create forums for. So when you're talking T2202As, I got that in the top of my mind, because we can't make mistakes in those areas. And so you identifying this is a moment in time where we're feeling pressure allows us to do our very best to reallocate resources, so we have surge capacity when we need it, and we can manage through those bumps a little bit better. But I want to end by saying, I hear what you're saying. You're not crazy. I'm acknowledging that these moments are really happening for people, and they're happening all over the place, and that we're getting through them because folks like you are willing to step forward and show us and shine a light on the places that we need to pay more attention to. And I really appreciate that, because at this speed, we need that kind of collaboration so that we can get through this together in a better place, so that 3 years down the road, when you can add more resources, you know where you're putting them, and you've managed through well enough with each person that's been helping you.
Thank you, Melissa. Well said. And Denise, again, great question. And thank you for raising the question and comment. Jillian, I apologize. I don't necessarily have time to take another question. So I'd like to conclude, but Jillian, please either email, and if you want, you can just send it right to me. Email me your question or comment, and we'll make sure that it gets included. Or again, if you'd like to chat, don't hesitate to just let me know. I would like to thank everybody for coming out and sharing that honest feedback and your thoughtful questions. It's actually good. It's comforting. Comforting is maybe not the right word. It helps me feel like we're advancing in these conversations, that we can, say some of the things and have some of the discussion that we've had today. And so thank you. And I encourage people to keep bringing those thoughts and questions forward. If anyone did have questions that weren't answered here today, or you think about something once we end here today, please do submit your questions in the set feedback form. You can find it on the UAT website, and it will also be available in the post-event survey that will come out, and you'll receive that shortly. For anybody that actually registered for today's event, you'll receive an email again just in a short number of days with the slides and the recording of today's session and that post-event survey. Please do take a minute to complete the survey. We of course do go through the comments and the feedback and do work to incorporate them not only into these sessions but into our broader communications and change management efforts. I would like to thank some of the people anyways who help make events like this possible. First of all, a big thank you to our panelists, President Flanagan, Greta Cummings, Melissa Padfield. Thank you to Claire and Grant for helping us on the technical side today. Much appreciated. You've, I think, been with us since the beginning on these sessions, and your expertise is much appreciated. Thank you to Pam and Carla today for being here with us as our ASL interpreters. Thanks as well to the members of the SET team who are working very hard in their own right in the background over the past number of weeks preparing for today's event. And maybe most importantly, thanks as well to all the staff who joined us today and have engaged with us throughout this process. Those of you that have worked to keep yourselves informed and help to identify opportunities for future improvements. We do greatly appreciate everybody's involvement and willingness to have these important conversations and to help guide us as we move forward. As Bill referenced when he started, I know that the past year and a half or so have been very challenging, but it is with our collective effort and support and collaboration that we'll continue to move through this period and pave that path forward to future success. We are working on having our next set of Ask Said Anything events starting again in January. Once we confirm the dates, of course, we'll post those, for everybody's information. They'll be on the UAT consultation page, so please stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, please keep an eye out on the FAQ page on the UAT website, as we will be posting the answers to today's questions. And Tara, I've made note that we do owe you you and everybody else, but to your questions, a detailed response to that. We'll also continue to share our UAT updates in regular course, so for faculty and staff in the quad every Thursday. So thank you all again for joining us today, for participating, and please have a great and safe weekend. We'll talk to you soon.